Above average, mostly in the teens, high teens again across the south. That mild theme continues through the weekend and into next week. There'll be some showers this weekend, heavy ones on Sunday, but some sunshine too.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning and welcome to The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, here on GB News. Today we're going to explore what on earth the government is up to and, frankly, whether we still have a government. Today we explore last night's extraordinary scenes in Parliament, reminiscent of the 1970s. Ministers shouting, MPs pushed through voting lobbies, all over who controls the order paper. Or was it to do with fracking? Or was it to do with Liz Truss's leadership? We'll get to the bottom of all of these issues after the headlines.
Good morning, it's just gone 9:30. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government is at risk of collapse after a turbulent 24 hours. Last night, confusion over a fracking vote brought chaos in the Commons as Conservative MPs were told it would, then it wouldn't be treated as a confidence vote. It came after Suella Braverman's resignation as Home Secretary following a security issue in which she accused the government of breaking key pledges. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting told us Tory infighting affects the whole country.
Well, I think people can see it for themselves. It is a shambles. And the real kicker in all of this is that the chaos that we see at the heart of government is causing real pain for people who are seeing their mortgage costs go up, the cost of living increase, and big challenges in our country, like the biggest crisis in the history of the NHS, going unaddressed because we have a rabble instead of a government.
Sources close to the Deputy Prime Minister say she denies manhandling Tory MPs to force them to support the government during Labour's fracking vote. Therese Coffey was encouraging MPs but didn't put her hands on members, they say. It follows reports on social media that one Tory MP was in tears as they were led into the No lobby to vote against the motion. Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg also insists he saw no evidence of anyone being coerced. The government won the vote with a majority of 90. Downing Street has issued a statement confirming the Chief and Deputy Chief Whips remain in post. It follows reports that Wendy Morton and Craig Whitaker had quit following the chaos of the fracking vote. A Number 10 spokesperson said they have the Prime Minister's full confidence. Downing Street says the Whips will now be speaking to Conservative MPs who failed to support the government, and those without a reasonable excuse will face disciplinary action. A survivor of sexual abuse says child victims will feel cheated if the report from the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse isn't hard-hitting. The document, published today, will include 2 parts: victims' and survivors' voices and recommendations for change. One victim says she hopes priests will be forced to pass on allegations of child abuse to police, even if they're made during confessions. And a US citizen accused over the death of a British motorcyclist, Harry Dunn, is due to enter a plea later. And Sakoulis is charged with causing the death of the 19-year-old following a collision outside a US military base in Northamptonshire in August 2019. 45-year-old Sakoulis was able to leave the UK with diplomatic immunity, but was later charged with dangerous driving. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the briefing with Tom.
Good morning, it's 9:34 and this is the briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. So what on earth happened yesterday? Chaos broke out in the heart of Parliament. Of course, Suella Braverman was removed as Home Secretary earlier that day, officially due to a breach of the ministerial code. But in reality, it appears this was more to do with a Truss-Braverman row over immigration policy that took place the night before. And Mr. Spreadsheet himself and Rishi backer Grant Shapps became our new Home Secretary. But, extraordinarily, at the height of the chaos was still to come. The Labour Party, of course, used their Opposition Day debate to force a vote on hydraulic fracturing and, indeed, seizing the order paper to deliver it. The government announced a 3-line whip and that it should be seen as a confidence vote. Confusion, however, began when Minister Graham Stewart told his MPs that it wasn't a confidence vote. That's after the Chief Whip had told MPs it was a confidence vote. And then all hell broke out in the voting lobbies from MPs trying to seek answers. This led to chaotic scenes, which some present claimed included the manhandling of MPs. It's reported that due to the confusion, the Chief Whip, Wendy Morton, and Deputy Chief Whip, Craig Whitaker, quit their roles. Yet a very late statement last night was issued by the Number 10 team, which said the Prime Minister had full confidence in their Chief Whip and Deputy Chief Whip, saying that they remained in post. There's a lot to make sense of here. Of course, last night MPs were voting on an Opposition Day motion on fracking. The critics of extracting our British natural shale gas say that the process may cause earthquakes. Those who support hydraulic fracturing point out these seismic events are more minor than the activity associated with typical building sites, almost impossible to feel on the ground. Well, something that was impossible to not feel was the earthquake in politics last night, shaking the Prime Minister of her authority. A cabinet resignation, a further attempted cabinet resignation. Ministers shouting and an MP manhandled through the division lobbies in scenes reminiscent of the chaotic, brutish and dysfunctional minority government of the 1970s. It's hard to reconcile the scenes in Parliament with the fact that we're talking about a party with a historic Commons majority. A majority that is supposed to lead to stable and predictable government. And yet now it's doing nothing of the sort. Perhaps the more apt comparison is not the 1970s and their chaos, but the 1770s, where no party discipline, indeed no formal parties, existed at all, where governments survived and fell on the strength of their majorities in the House of Commons, rather than a single majority. The question facing the Conservative Party now is, this veritable rabble, can it be unified at all? The oldest and most successful political party in the history of the world is tearing itself to shreds, acting as if it doesn't want to be in government at all, and behaving as if it doesn't deserve it. What is clear is that these things cannot go on as they are. What's profoundly unclear, however, is how things change at all. How this Conservative parliamentary party, forged in the fires of disorder and leadership chaos of that previous parliament, has seemed doomed to repeat what made it. In 2019, the Conservatives appealed to those who wanted politics to go away, to make it stop, to get Brexit done, to end the arguments that were spilling out from Parliament into our workplaces, into our homes, into our lives. The message from the Conservative campaign headquarters was clear. The way to end the chaos was to deliver a Conservative majority. And now the party looks desperate to hand the same campaign strategy to their opponents, free of charge. It's hard to think of a more perfect backdrop to suit the most boring man in politics, Sir Keir Starmer. Boris Johnson's parting shot to his sparring partner across the Commons dispatch box in July was that the Labour leader was no more than a great big plastic bollard. He's one of those pointless plastic bollards you find around deserted roadworks on a motorway, the then Prime Minister declared. The trouble for the U-turning do-nothing Tories, though, is that at this point they seem intent upon making a pointless, boring bollard appear like the better option. Well, there's so much to discuss this morning, and I'm delighted to be joined first by Henry Hill, the Deputy Editor of the Conservative Home website. Let's try and make sense of what happened exactly. Henry, first question, did the Chief Whip try to resign?
I mean, yeah, it certainly sounds like it. You keep getting conflicting reports when you talk to people. That's the strange thing about trying to cover this government at the moment is, you message 5 different people and you get back, at least 4, maybe 6 different versions of events. But I mean, if she did, it's hard to blame her, because if it was her who advised the government to make the Labour motion a 3-line whip, she was right. As you mentioned in your speech, it wasn't the subject was fracking. But what was so technically problematic about it was that it would have given the opposition control of the order paper and the power to set parliamentary business. Now, the last time that happened is when John Bercow helped the opposition hijack control of the House of Commons to pass the Benn Act. It's deeply antithetical to the proper functioning of the House of Commons. So the government was right to whip against it as hard as they did, but Labour was very clever to frame that motion on fracking so that when MPs voted against it, Labour could say, they're voting for fracking, not for government control of the House.
Yes, and that seems elementary. However, then there was confusion as to whether or not it was a confidence motion. The Chief Whip seemed to not be in control of things, and then I receive a text at 1:33 this morning from the chief spokesman to the Prime Minister saying that there is indeed confidence in the Chief Whip, that Conservative MPs were fully aware that the vote was subject to a 3-line whip, but it doesn't say that it was a confidence motion. This is a government in chaos.
I mean, it is a government in chaos. I mean, also, frankly, control of the order paper sort of is a confidence motion, right? I mean, it's not really something that the government can declare confidence motions to be something it considers to be a confidence issue. But, I mean, does that mean that Liz Truss would have tendered her resignation or gone to the country if she lost it when the Conservatives are 25, 30 points behind in the polls? I don't think so. So it's an incredibly strange situation to be in. But yes, I think this is the point. The Conservative Party is essentially in Parliament seems to be becoming ungovernable. And the bigger problem really for Liz Truss is that she is going to have to, Jeremy Hunt is still trying to find billions of pounds worth of spending cuts. Tory MPs don't want to pass it. If they don't pass it, the markets are going to go haywire. So regardless of the day-to-day chaos, which, as you say, is absolutely extraordinary, the middle range projections for Liz Truss's government are absolutely grim.
I suppose it's 10 days until your usual monthly survey of what Conservative Party members think of various cabinet ministers is released, do you think that the Prime Minister will still be Prime Minister by the time your website publishes that survey?
I mean, I do. It's obviously not certain, and things are changing day to day. And every time I revisit this question, I think the timeline on Liz Truss leaving shortens. But it's still the case that there are some really important headwinds against getting rid of her. One, which is relatively easy to solve, is that the 1922 committee would have to change the rules. The second, which is more complicated, is that if the Tory MPs want to avoid a full contest, which involves, as last time, quite an extensive second round with the party members, then there needs to be a coronation. And as yet, there is no single candidate who the very divided Parliamentary Conservative Party can rally behind. So I think until that candidate emerges, Tory MPs will probably end up not striking because it will help. It will avoid having to have another sort of 4-week, 5-week, 6-week contest in the middle of a crisis.
So finally here, how do Tory MPs proceed? Talking to as many as would pick up the phone, it seems as if no one believes that Liz Truss is going to last more than a few more months. What on earth is the mechanism now?
Well, I mean, what could they do? I mean, basically, there's the men in grey suits option, which is where Graham Brady or a few other people go to Liz Truss and they say, look, we have received an overwhelming number of letters. You're just going to have to go, and they try and pressure her to resign. Otherwise, they can't really do anything technically according to the mechanisms, because the 1922 committee's rules forbid a leadership challenge within 1 year of a Tory leader being installed. But of course, the 1922 committee just sets its own rules, so it can change that at any time. So what really matters now is what Sir Graham Brady and the rest of the 1922 executive have decided they're going to do. What we're hearing is basically that they've said that there's a threshold, maybe it's a third of MPs, where they will reopen that question. If that happens, it will be a leadership contest, much like the ones that eventually saw off Boris Johnson.
And that would be deeply chaotic, probably something that MPs would really rather avoid, although never say never, I suppose. It's been the most extraordinary, only 4 days this week, and yet everything seems to have turned on its head. For now, Henry Hill, thank you so much for joining us here on The Briefing this morning. So much more to discuss on this subject, but first, let's hear the words of veteran Member of Parliament Charles Walker standing down at the next election, despairing for the state of his party.
Perfectly honest, this whole affair is inexcusable. It is a pitiful reflection on the Conservative Parliamentary Party at every level. And it reflects really badly, obviously, on the government of the day.
Do you think there's any coming back from this?
I don't think so. But I haven't. I have to say I've been of that view really since two weeks ago. This is an absolute disgrace. As a Tory MP of 17 years, who's never been a minister, who's got on with it loyally most of the time, I think it's a shambles and a disgrace. I think it is utterly appalling.
So you seem quietly...
I'm livid. And, I really shouldn't say this, but I hope all those people that put Liz Truss in number 10, I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it for the ministerial red box. I hope it was worth it to sit round the cabinet table, because the damage they have done to our party is extraordinary.
I'm sorry, it's very difficult to convey. You look just furious about this.
I am. I've had enough. I've had enough of talentless people putting their tick in the right box, not because it's in the national interest, but because it's in their own personal interest to achieve ministerial position. And I know I speak for hundreds of backbenchers who right now are worrying for their constituents all the time, but now worrying about their own personal circumstances, because there is nothing as an ex-MP. And a lot of my colleagues are wondering, as many of their constituents are wondering, how they're going to pay their mortgages if this all comes to an end soon.
Sir Charles Walker there speaking last night. Well, let's cross over now to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's outside the Home Office. And we are going to get to the replacement in Home Secretary, because, of course, out of the great offices of state, there are 4: Prime Minister, Home, Chancellor, Foreign. 2 of the 4 have swapped in the last few days. But before we get on to Suella Braverman and indeed Grant Shapps, Mark, I believe you've got a breaking update about what's going on with environmental protesters.
Yeah, well, this is one of the issues, of course, that the new Home Secretary is going to have to grapple with, and that is what to do about these environmental activists, Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion and others, who are causing chaos on a daily basis, in particular around central London. Well, they've just struck again this morning, this time in Knightsbridge. A group of activists have sprayed orange paint outside the front of that luxury department store. Others have sat down on the main A4, blocking both carriageways of the A4 heading into central London. So what we have now, of course, is the usual routine of police reinforcements rushing to the scene to deal as quickly as possible with these people, to get them unglued from the road surface, although hopefully with this wet the glue's not going to be sticking anyway, but getting them off the road and clearing that up. And as I say, Tom, that's just one of the issues that Grant Shapps will have to deal with in what is arguably one of the most difficult government departments. The Home Office is always throwing up controversies of one sort or another. There's violent crime on the increase, there's trust in policing, and of course there is the ongoing very serious concerns about immigration, in particular about the arrival of thousands of people across the English Channel on these small boats.
It's extraordinary that this sort of chaos inside government is matched by chaos outside government too. Perhaps the two are related. But let's get on to the reason why the Home Secretary was swapped out or sacked or resigned, or however we want to describe it. There's an official reason, and then there's a reported unofficial reason. What's the technicality on which Suella Braverman said she resigned?
Well, there is a technicality in that she did breach the ministerial code. There's no doubt about that, in sharing a document which hadn't been cleared with someone who wasn't cleared to receive that document. But much of the information in the document with regards to immigration policy had been in the public realm already. And on any other occasion, Tom, you and I know that this breach of the ministerial code, an honest mistake, could have been dealt with by an apology and everyone moves on. But that was, if we're honest, the pretext for getting rid of a Home Secretary who is at loggerheads, or was at loggerheads, with the Prime Minister over key planks of policy, including what they do about immigration. We know that going forward it is now an aim of this government to increase migration into the UK as a means of, as they see it, boosting the economy and stimulating growth within the economy. That's something that the Home Secretary, previous Home Secretary Suella Braverman, was fundamentally opposed to. It seems that that policy difference is irreconcilable, and now we have a new Home Secretary in the form of Grant Shapps, and we'll see what he has to say. We have an urgent question which has been granted for 10:30 this morning on the departure of Suella Braverman. We've not had it confirmed whether it will be Grant Shapps who's taking that urgent question, but it's being asked by the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. So some interesting dialogue, no doubt, in the Commons in the hour ahead.
Yes, Mark, and we will be bringing viewers that live here on GB News at 1:30 the hour. No doubt more parliamentary fireworks after last night too. Mark, thank you so much for joining us there outside the Home Office, the Peel building, as it's known there on Marsham Street in Westminster, named, of course, after former Conservative Party leader Robert Peel. Well, let's get now to our next guest, Kelvin Mckenzie, the former editor of The Sun. Kelvin, there is just so much to explore about what on earth has gone on, not just in the last week, but frankly in the last 12 or so hours. What do you make of it?
Well, it's shocking. If you're somebody like me, I've been on the right now for 40 odd years, probably longer actually. to watch these ambitious, cunning, devious Conservative MPs all warring against each other while the nation is in the most tremendous problems. Watching their selfishness is inexplicable and inexcusable. The sooner that Truss goes, I would be delighted. I mean, the good news really is that now we have both Hunt and Shapps, who are massively hostile to her thought process. At least we've got a couple of people who are likely to go to her. And what I suspect is happening is they'll go around the cabinet very quietly, asking, is there anybody here who wants to keep Truss? And then eventually, when the massive majority emerges, that that nobody has any confidence in her, and who could have confidence in her? And the people I also blame, I don't even blame the cabinet, I blame the idiot Conservative Party members who voted for this fool to damage our country at a moment of great peril. What about them? They should stand up and say, I did do this. And I'll tell you how I know about those idiots is because on my Twitter feed, I pointed out 8 weeks ago that she would destroy the party and may well destroy the country. Have a look it up. At that, there was a massive pile-on against me by these idiots who had voted for her. And they are the people mainly responsible. Now we've got their clones, which are sitting around the cabinet because none of the Sunak people, none of the Boris people were allowed in under this idiot, which I see you've now got on the video here. And this has to be addressed. This is our nation we're talking about. We're not talking about some two-bob publicly quoted company that's not worth anything anymore. We're talking about people going to work and worrying about their housing and worrying about their jobs and worrying about their gas bill. And all we've got is this drama going on involving one woman's refusal to understand that she's the wrong person to run our country. She doesn't have the intellect nor the political nous to make it all work.
Now, what do you say?
The idea that she's some kind of Thatcher is so far away. I knew Thatcher. She's no Thatcher. She's nothing. She's nothing at all. I doubt whether she could be deputy chief whip. She's been over-promoted. So ambition over ability, and it's our nation. We forget it's the nation that matters. And the other thing that's going to happen around my way,
Party
I live in
members.
Weybridge.
What do you say to the
go on.
Conservative Party members who felt like they had a very difficult choice? Either the woman who said that she would cut taxes, and they may have thought that she wasn't the best in her speaking ability, but they thought that her economic agenda was sound, versus the guy who'd been running the economy for 2 years, had ballooned the debt, had presided over double-digit inflation, who was raising corporation tax at the time that we were going into, or likely going into a recession. I mean, it was a horrible choice on either side.
No. We had no money. If this were their own finances, they wouldn't go and say, I tell you what, my house is a massive debt to me. I owe £400,000 on this mortgage. I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to try and borrow another £400,000, even though my job is insecure and there is inflation roaring. No, they made a fundamental, massive error. We needed somebody, at least, who understood what a balance sheet looks like. What we ended up is somebody who thought that actually I've got a new way of creating money. Anyway, the market said to her, no, you haven't. You're running a skint country. We are done for. And that election, so it's to the Conservative Party members in the first instance were the idiots of this, and many of them will be your viewers currently.
Kelvin, we only have 30 seconds left on the programme, but I really do want to get in this final question. The vote happened at 9 p.m. last night. I got a text through from the Prime Minister's official spokesman at 1:33 in the morning trying to explain what happened. In all your years editing The Sun, did you ever have to wait 4.5 hours through into beyond the middle of the night for an explanation from the Prime Minister's official spokesman for what happened in Parliament?
But that is the chaos of it all, isn't it? And the sooner we get rid of her, the better. The idea that 1:33 in the morning, had they been on, trying to persuade these people to stay on in their jobs after she's flip-flopped, it is her responsibility. It is her to go. It was an idiot choice. She hasn't the intellect. She's destroying our nation. Thank you and good night.
Well, Kelvin Mckenzie, on that note, thank you for your forthright views here on the briefing this morning. Always appreciate you coming on the programme. Really strong stuff there. If you agree, if you disagree, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, coming up, it's To The Point. I'm presenting the next 2 hours along with Inaya Falar and Iman. And remember, stick around for that big Home Office question bust-up at 1:30. But first, here's the weather.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. We switched things around a bit today. It's still going to be pretty mild, but it won't be as windy. There'll be outbreaks of rain in the east, whereas yesterday's rain across the west has disappeared and it's generally looking drier and brighter here. Still got low pressure down to the southwest, and it's these weather fronts that have been marching northwards, providing some heavy downpours through the night. Still moving slowly across Scotland, so a wet start here and more rain coming into the southeast this morning. That's also going to be quite heavy at times, spreading into East Anglia and up towards Lincolnshire. Some of that rain at times getting into the Midlands, but I suspect much of the West Midlands will be dry, and skies brightening for Wales, South West England and Northern Ireland. Certainly a much cheerier day compared to yesterday, and it's pretty mild wherever you are. Temperatures in the teens, high teens in the south with a bit of sunshine. But obviously it's not going to feel very mild across the east with that rain, which is likely to spill back into parts of northeast England this evening and back into parts of eastern and southern Scotland overnight. And still some of that rain could be on the heavy side. The wind's a bit lighter today, but they will pick up again tonight as further bands of showers drift northwards up from the southwest. But the winds are always coming up from the south, so again, it's going to be fairly mild as we start tomorrow morning. Now, some spots will start with a bit of sunshine, but be prepared for showers tomorrow. Heavy showers initially over Wales and southwest England, but spreading slowly northwards. The rain kind of lingers across northern Scotland throughout the day. Some brighter spells for southern Scotland and eastern England, where there won't be as many showers. So a drier day to come tomorrow across East Anglia and Lincolnshire. But even here, late on, some showers will move in. The showers will be zipping through on a fairly brisk breeze, and it's still going to be pretty mild with temperatures above average, mostly in the teens. High teens again across the south. That mild theme continues through the weekend and into next week. There'll be some showers this weekend, heavy ones on Sunday, but some sunshine too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.